Our next guest, Samet Akhti, is already with us. He's Principal Diversity and Inclusion at Zalando. Hello there.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you with us. We have very little time, I'm told. You need to run somewhere to another meeting, I take it. So let's see if we can discuss this super interesting topic and a very important one. But first, Samet, tell me, your background is in strategic communication, isn't it?
That's right. So when you sort of consider my study background, I did study strategic communication or strategic business communication. And then I've been working at this very intersection of diversity and inclusion and communication for a few years now, and also as a speaker. So it's a very interesting combination of the two professions. And I find it quite helpful, actually, having a comms background in a D&I industry that is an industry that also deals a lot with communication and with risk, right?
Well, I do understand that. As things stand, I work a lot in strategic communication. So what it does to you is it automatically puts your mindset in a risk management scenarios or in risk management communication, so to say. So we decided in our prep talk that we wanted to talk in a more or less case study formula. We want to talk about gender-neutral restrooms and bathrooms. Samet, if I may ask you, it's not necessarily clear to everyone what these are. So can we start by explaining the concept?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I always think it's easier to actually say what gender-neutral restrooms are not, basically, because gender-neutral restrooms are spaces that are not divided by gender identity or sex, right? They're designed to be for everyone, regardless of your gender identity or expression. And the way these take form can be quite different, right? So you've got the single occupancy facilities, for example, which are like these standalone rooms. And then there are multi-user like setups where traditionally they're separated into men's and women's bathrooms, or in case of gender-neutral restrooms, they are meant for everyone, regardless of gender. Now, some companies, they offer both options, so single-room gender-neutral restrooms alongside spaces specifically for men and women. And often why we have that separation is actually also because of local law and like sort of regulations around how to design buildings.
Like in Germany,
And
right?
for example, right?
You have specific legal designation that you either have a restroom for men or for women, and that's it.
Exactly. So there's something called the, if we translated the German workplace health and safety rules, for example, and they require that buildings have, or they offer separate sanitary rooms for, and I quote, female and male employees. But what many companies do these days, they recognize that gender identity is not necessarily binary, and they aim to be intentionally inclusive in how they conform to this legal requirement in countries like Germany.
Right. So if I may ask you, because it's kind of ironic, in my humble opinion, one of the best television series ever in the legal department, so to say, Ali McBeal may have solved this problem a long time ago, right?
I'm not familiar with the show, I guess.
It's a show where you have a bunch of lawyers using exactly the type of restrooms that you're talking about, having lots of fun, and much of this legal / musical / comedy television series is all about the interactions people have in the restroom spaces, having fun, dancing, all sorts of activities. Super funny in that context. But on a more serious line, is it only about the specific legal denotations that we don't want this one-to-one division? What's the expectation there? When do those restrooms become inclusive?
Yeah, I guess there are different things to consider here, right? I think, first of all, we do have to say probably that trans inclusion at the workplace, it often gets reduced to this one seemingly controversial topic of restrooms, and that I believe for many trans people can be quite the tiring topic. So I do think it's probably important to acknowledge that trans inclusion means so much more than this topic, but at the same time, it's also the truth that it is a quite widespread initiative that companies go for trans inclusion. So I think both of these things can be true at once. So I think it's good that we dive into it. And I think the way you want to work on such an initiative is to basically, if we really want to break it down, consider two things. And because typically when you launch these restrooms, people really share concerns regarding safety, privacy, or also like
Of course.
potential misuse or harm, right?
Makes perfect
And
sense.
exactly. So I would consider two things, or that I would recommend. And one is actually to involve the queer community or the trans community at your workplace early on in the implementation or the planning of such an initiative. For example, this can be quite easy if they're organized in an ERG, employee resource group. If that's not possible for you or you haven't done that, then at least give them like a heads up that you're planning to install gender neutral restrooms, because it's quite helpful to get the support
Samet,
from the group that is.
allow me to stop you there. Gender-neutral restrooms, but I really want our audience to understand what's the expectation there. In your wishful thinking in a scenario when dreams become reality, what would you like to change specifically for the better so that they do become more inclusive?
I mean, the goal is basically to make sure that everyone feels comfortable using the restroom, essentially, right? And many people in the queer community, they have had problems with using gendered public spaces throughout their lives, not only restrooms. And that can range from like mild discomfort to like not feeling in the right place to actually also feeling like or fearing for your life and fearing for your safety. And so everyone is supposed to like use the toilets or the restrooms that they feel most comfortable with. And this is basically the goal that we strive towards. And how that can take place is by like communicating to your employees, for example, by encouraging them to please use the restroom that best fits their gender identity or their gender expression. And to make sure that everyone does feel included and safe in that to do, so to say.
Right. Samet, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. There's a lot of food for thought around this case study formula because it needs to be clarified if any solutions are to be arrived at. Thank you for your time, Samet Akhti, Zalando, and all the best. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.